Hey, Dakin, can I get a oh yeah?
Oh yeah! What's up, y'all? I'm Dakin, this is my bro Stacy, and this is the Steakin Claims podcast.
A show where we talk about, laugh at, and educate each other on the weirdest things we know and do. We got guests, we got game, and we got good vibes. Alright, this is a very special episode of our podcast, and starting a new series called the Emergency Podcasts.
Emergency episodes! It sounds cooler because it's double E.
Yes, EE. Double E.
Emergency episodes.
So, Jordan, why don't you tell us what this emergency episode is all about?
Absolutely. So, as we all know, yesterday was a glorious day for Oprah because she released her interview with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and it was a bombshell of an interview. And because of that, we decided that this was something that we would need to be addressing. However, we are very aware of the date today, with it being March 8th and being International Women's Day. So we're going to attempt to tackle both of these issues in this episode.
All at once.
All at once.
It's just going to all come out.
Yeah, 100%.
So when was this interview actually taken?
The interview was taken in the beginning to mid-February. I'm not sure on the exact date, but it was recorded, there we go, sometime around then, because on the 19th of February is when the Queen, and by extension Buckingham Palace, decided to remove all of Prince Harry's honorary military ranks, etc., all of his titles and all that. So that was already recorded at the time of the interview, and then here we are when the interview was taking place. Before we get into the nitty-gritty parts of the actual interview, I just want to provide a blanket disclaimer for everything that we're going to talk about this episode. For those of you who may not know, Andrew and I are both white people. Therefore, we come from a place of privilege. And we will be discussing racism, sexism, and other isms at various points throughout this podcast, and we will provide a similar but applicable disclaimer at all of those episodes. However, today's episode is going to primarily focus on racism and sexism and misogyny and all that fun stuff. And we want to acknowledge that we are speaking from a place of privilege and we do not have answers. And we are doing this in an attempt to educate each other as well as anybody else who may want to gain more information on these systemic issues.
We are not professionals on this subject, and we're still learning ourselves. So that's basically the heart of the disclaimer, is we don't know everything, and we are not in the position to fully understand other people's views that are affected in these situations fully.
And just other people who are affected in these situations as well. Our main hope with this podcast, regardless of what we're talking about, is to just open a conversation. And on our more serious episodes like this one is going to be, we want to open a serious conversation about what needs to change. And that is our hope for this episode. So with that being said, let's launch right in. So we're going to start out with just giving our general impressions of the interview. Andrew, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start out, because I just want to come right out and say that, I don't know a whole lot about the royal family and what they do as a whole and what their situation is. And so for me, this interview was pretty eye-opening on some of the stuff that actually goes down. And for example, how there's the royal family in and itself, and then there's the whole institution behind the royal family. And Jordan, you actually brought up a really good description earlier of what the institution actually is. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, for sure. So the institution, there's, as Andrew kind of explained, there is the family themselves, but then the institution consists of all the aides and assistants and people who work for the palace. And so it's their influence just as much as it is the actual family's influence that's kind of enforcing a lot of what Meghan and Harry were discussing and a lot of the rules that we know as members of the public.
Right.
So yeah, Andrew, like, just on top of being eye-opening, like, would you attribute anything else to the interview in terms of your experience as watching it?
It was very eye-opening to me on how much the media plays a role in the whole royal family situation, and how much they kind of, not necessarily influence, but they, like, basically, no, like, the general public doesn't get to just chat with the royal family and find out what they're all about. So all this information that the general public is getting is all through the media. It's the only truth they know, per se.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it was really eye-opening for me when Meghan was talking about, for example, the whole situation with her and Kate, and the whole, how she allegedly made Kate cry with the flower girl dress at their wedding.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the interview, allegedly it was actually the complete reverse. And they went on to talk about, like, a couple of other things that Kate in her pregnancy and Meghan in her pregnancy did similarly. And Kate got all this praise and love from the media. Meanwhile, Meghan was kind of attacked by the media. And it just kind of, it's really eye-opening seeing how much the media plays a role in the royal family's appearance. I learned, I didn't really think about that before.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, it's true, like, not, like, the public doesn't just get to see behind the scenes of the royal family.
Yeah.
It's all portrayed by the media. And so it's kind of neat to see the views of this interview from members of the royal family themselves. Not only members of the royal family, like, not just the tight-knit ones, but sort of, I guess, a general word, for lack of other words, for them are, like, outcasts of the royal family.
They're definitely the outspoken parts.
Yeah.
I think that brings up, like, a very interesting point, and I think Harry especially has represented that for a lot of his life, particularly as he got older and after Princess Di was killed. I think that he is kind of falling in a line that's very similar to how Princess Di lived her life. A little bit outspoken, especially after her and Prince Charles were divorced. So yeah, I think that's, like, a very, very good point that you brought up.
Yeah, and so another thing I want to kind of go off on here a little bit is the views that I don't know whether it was the royal family themselves. I think it was, from the sounds of the interview, but also with influences from the institution. Their views on Meghan Markle's race,
Mm-hmm.
and their concerns about what I'm totally quoting here, but like what color the baby will come out as.
Absolutely.
And it's like, why does that matter? It's 2021. Like, why does the royal family have to stay white?
Exactly.
And so what bothers me is that when after they had conversations about these concerns with Harry, not even to Meghan, but to Harry, and then they started basically wanting to remove their security, remove their titles from their children.
Mm-hmm.
And that just seems completely wrong to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to jump on a very similar train to yours, in that it is completely wrong, in my opinion. And, you know, you mentioned, why does it matter? It's 2021. But I'd like to even, like, take that, like, a step further almost, and be like, why should it matter?
Yeah.
And not to say that, like, you know, the color of his skin doesn't matter, because I think it does. And I think it speaks to, like, a lot of racist, like, moments in history. And to account them towards the royal family, I can't say that I can think of any off the top of my head. And perhaps I'm a little bit ignorant in that aspect. However, I've spoken with many colleagues and friends who are BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, or Black, Indigenous people of color. And to say that, like, why should it matter? It definitely comes with, like, a lot of connotations with it, in that I am, on a face level, I am implying that we shouldn't see color, which is not what I intend to imply. When I say why should it matter, I mean it in a sense of, like Meghan said, the Commonwealth is very diverse, and this is a great moment for representation. And so why the monarchy is kind of making a big deal out of it is perplexing to me. And in that, you have a glorious opportunity for some representation here, so why not encourage that? And it shouldn't matter if he's darker or lighter, because he is mixed race, and he's gonna grow up with that influence, and I think that's absolutely a great thing for him. And I think it needs to be expressed and shared, and realistically, that quote unquote the color shouldn't matter, but it will. I hope I'm making sense in a way that is, like, coming across as not the face value of I'm implicitly trying to ignore his color, but I'm trying to, like, express the diversity key here. The diversity piece is more important.
I'm going to go back a little bit to where you touched on kind of, like, growing up not even noticing color anymore. And I think that's a big thing, and that's stemming from why I said it's 2021, why should it matter? Because growing up, I didn't even think about different races, or like how, like, growing up, I'm just like, hey, these are all my friends, they're all people. Like, I didn't even notice until we started, like, learning, until growing up, and then you hear on the news, you start learning about racism, and it's like, oh, like, yeah, you never really, like, growing up nowadays, you don't even notice. It's, and, like, not to say, like, I should say, it's not so much that you don't notice anymore, it's more so that it doesn't matter. They're all...
Yeah, they're just your friends.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, oh, this is my Indigenous friend, or this is my Black friend. Unless, like, that becomes a conversation that you have, or you, like, get the opportunity to explore that culture. You're not identifying your friends by the color of their skin.
Right.
And it's not affecting your relationship except for possibly like in learning opportunities, so to speak. And so I can speak from some personal experiences here growing up, in that although like I grew up in a incredibly white town, I did have a few friends who were indigenous or people of color or black, and that didn't matter to me in terms of like their skin color. However, what was nice was those learning opportunities that I didn't know were learning opportunities at the time. So, you know, you go over to your friend's house and you stay for dinner, and, you know, your friend is from Jamaica, and suddenly you're making like something from Jamaica that you've never had because you're not from Jamaica, so you don't know where that food is or how to cook it, etc., etc. Is the learning opportunities like that, or you're playing a game that like they play with their family at like a family reunion or something,
right,
that you don't know how to play because you've never played it. It's those cultural moments that will affect your like experiences with race as a child, and kind of make you aware of different skin colors in that sense. Whereas it doesn't make you racist. Racism is like perpetuated through the media, through systems. Racism is taught. Nobody is born racist. Yeah. It's taught. And so if you don't get those experiences of learning about culture and learning about whatever it may be, like residential schools, slavery, etc., 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 then you're not going to have those experiences to be able to base it off of anything. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Now, I'm going to bring it back just a little bit here to the interview.
We went off on quite the tangent there.
It's good, it's good. The other thing that caught my eye in the interview with Harry and Meghan, actually this one was when it was just Meghan. And I don't know what factors influenced the beginning of these issues, whether it was from Meghan and some of her personal issues herself, or whether it was from the royal family and issues pertaining within the royal family that influenced it. But the lack of mental health and support and the mental health issues that seemed to happen to Meghan in particular, but like that, I imagine, and Harry, it sounded like he had some himself. It's like, why is there no support? Being that you're so present in the world, like you'd think there would be more support and more recognition, especially in members of your own family, for mental health support.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I'm going to hypothesize here a little bit. As Harry mentioned later in the interview, or in one of the bonus clips that has since been released by CBS and Oprah, Harry mentioned something along the lines of being at a dinner and his friend or colleague or somebody said, you know, don't marry Meghan, like the UK's bigoted, they're not going to like this. And Harry was like, no, I disagree with you, like the UK media is bigoted. And I feel like that probably played a factor into it. Right. And in a statement that, like, had news been released or had it gotten covered up and then became exposed at some point, like, I think in some aspects the media would have had a field day with that. Right. And given their past treatment of Meghan Markle, I think we would have seen headlines along the line of, like, psycho Meghan Markle or crazy Meghan, etc., etc., which none of them would have been true or accurate and should never have been published in the first place.
Right.
And that doesn't give anybody an excuse to shut Meghan down when she is bringing up the fact that she would like help, and she's using the courage to come and say that she needs help.
And see, that brings me back to the whole media influencing the royal family, into which something like that, something as simple as mental health issues, why does that need to be publicized? Why can they not do things privately on their own and not have the whole world know about it? Something especially like mental health issues, like the fact of Meghan's mental health. Why can that not be dealt with privately, at first at least, and then if she wants to publicize what she went through, then that should be her choice. But why can private issues like that, not be a private matter within the royal family? Like, that's what I mean by the influence, or the portrayal and the lack of privacy the royal family has because of the media.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know if there is an answer to your question in that sense. I think we can even go like further with that and equate it to a lot of celebrities. Like, one who's coming to mind right now is Demi Lovato and her publicization of her issues with her mental health, and how pretty much any time she ended up in a rehab, somebody knew about it and it was leaked. And that's just like a big question, is like that I would love to have an answer to, that I don't.
I should rephrase it from a question to a statement, in the fact that whether it be the royal family, whether it be celebrities, people should have privacy in some of these matters like that. And the media, the thing I hate about media is that they can portray anyone how they like, how they feel fit, how they would get the most views and publicity. And it's like, and again, even with celebrities, going back to the fact of the royal family, it's a fat chance you're ever going to know these celebrities personally and what they're actually like. Their whole portrayal comes through the media.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's fucked up. Especially when it comes to issues like mental health matters, because it sure as hell isn't helping them with their mental health when they're trying to get help, and the media is portraying them like, oh, they're fucking crazy because they're going to rehab or whatever. Like, they have this serious issue. It's like, yes, but they're getting help.
Yeah.
Don't portray it like they're crazy or that they have a major problem. Even if they do have it, focus on the part that they're getting help, mm-hmm. not the problem at hand.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely something like I wish would happen a lot more, and I think like it comes down to like a lot of.
Good, I am recording.
That would have sucked. It comes down to like a big kind of cycle almost of, perpetuating that stigma of, if you have a mental health issue, you're not okay and you need to get help and you're crazy, and it just kind of goes round and round and round, and it makes it very difficult for somebody who is struggling to get help. And sir, your lights, thank you. And it's unfortunate that as a society we are, I say complicit, but I also know that is vaguely naive to say, and that there are people who are speaking out against this, and there are people who are speaking up and encouraging the media to stop, and there are media outlets who are choosing to focus a little bit more on the fact that, these people are getting the help that they need versus the fact that they are, quote, crazy, end quote. And I think we still have a long way to go with that, and I wish it wasn't that way and we were already kind of moving to a point of being much more accepting of mental health issues. And unfortunately, I don't see it happening and stretching as far as we would like in our lifetimes. But I would like to think, and I would like to have hope that, like, our grandchildren or our great-grandchildren get to a point in which there is that focus on the positive aspects of recovery versus this perpetuation of stigma and being crazy because you have a chemical imbalance in your brain or because you have experienced all of these traumatic events or whatever your situation may be.
Right.
And that would be one of my hopes. And I would like to see that if we aren't going to privatize these issues and not like systemically privatize them, but privatize them and personalize them, in that when you are experiencing distress, you as the celebrity or you as the prince or the princess get to voice that when you are ready. Yeah. Instead of having a random picture of you leaked walking into a psychiatric hospital or a rehab center.
Right.
I would hope that you can speak to that when you are ready. And I think in order for that to happen, there needs to be some major changes in society. And I think we're starting to turn that corner.
Yeah, I think we're heading in the right direction. Like you said, though, I'm not sure if we're going to fully be there within our lifetime. I hope we are. But I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, it's difficult to talk about on any sense, whether you're a person struggling, a person supporting, but having these conversations and speaking up against these issues are so key and so important. And that is, like, and I don't mean to say that you need to speak up about every issue that's perpetuated in the media, but I think if you can, I'd say loosely, like, if you pick a couple issues that mean a lot to you and channel a lot of your focus into them and giving as much as you can give whilst not completely giving yourself away to speaking up against these issues, I think is important. However, also being sure to leave room to be able to educate yourself on other issues that may arise and going to sources. And so, like, Black History Month just ended, and there was as there usually is there, and I appreciate it, there was a big push to, like, listen to Black creators, and there was a lot of people on TikTok who were Black, and they were educating about Black history and all of that. And I think making a point to kind of, especially as a white person and coming from that point of privilege, making a point to go to those people and listen to the Black creators, get that Black education or Black history education, and really diversify your own experiences so that you can at least begin to, like, gain a small piece of the empathy that will be needed to make this systemic change.
Right. So, going back to Harry and Meghan, how do you think their future is going to look like in the next little bit? After the interview, after the situations that have happened, after their removal of security, and stuff along those lines. Like, I know they touched on they have their own, what is it, business?
Yeah, their organization.
They have their own organization now called
Archwell. Yeah, no, speaking of their future, to be honest, like, I think you're gonna see they're either gonna, like, lay low for a little bit and, like, have their daughter become a little bit more private, etc., etc., or they're going to kind of explode on the scene in terms of activism and promoting social change and, you know, using Archwell to kind of voice into that and promote that. And
so what is Archwell? What is their organization?
You know, if I knew, I'd love to tell you. I don't know exactly what it is, to be honest. I think it's a foundation, so I think it is, like, supposed to be like a non-profit, like, charity, something along those lines. But I genuinely don't know. Like, I'm not a royal family expert on any scale. I just really like Princess Di and Prince Harry, and that's kind of where the epitome of my knowledge ends. And I think the Queen is iconic, and she gets excited about cows, and I get happy about that. So to say that I even follow them is a little bit far-fetched. I just got really excited because I love Prince Harry and Meghan Markle both, and I got really excited to hear their interview after knowing that they left the royal family and kind of being able to explore that a little bit.
Now, in your opinion, do you think there will be a push for change within the royal family, within the institution, within that whole kind of monarchy after the views that have been brought up in this interview?
That's a really good question. To be honest, I'm not sure. I have a feeling, and it's about a 50-50 feeling, that either Harry and Meghan are going to, like, lose contact with a lot of the family, in a sense that they won't like the fact that they were spoken out against, and the institution was spoken out against. However, I would like to also see the palace enact change and kind of release statements and follow through on what they say they're going to do, and encourage more, whether it be mental health support or, like, admit that, like, there is systemic racism within the institution, and combat and attempt to begin to combat that. I think would be, like, an ultimate, a good change.
Right.
However, I'm not sure if I can say that it's going to happen, right? Like,
now, that's the other thing I kind of want to get your opinion on, is do you think there's any kind of one, I say organization loosely, but more so like organization, any one person of power or organization that could influence those changes? Or, see, in my opinion, I think it would take kind of the whole, or at least a large portion of the Commonwealth population to kind of speak out against that stuff in order for there to be a change within the royal institution and their views and outlooks and actions on the issues we just discussed.
Yeah, no, like, here's my thoughts on, like, a lot of the issues that are very prevalent today, in that the demand for social change often does come from the bottom and from the general public and the masses in a large push for that change. And unfortunately, if you don't have that top tier level support, especially from like a powerhouse like the monarchy, particularly in Britain, but I suppose across the Commonwealth would also be feasible, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to get stamped out. And so you kind of need that top-down approach to change the issues.
Right.
Because that's where the power actually lies. Right? And so, 500,000 people may petition for this change, but if the half of the parliament that was petitioned is not enough people, then that change is not going to get enacted, right?
Right.
So you kind of need that top-down support. And like I just said in my last kind of spiel, I don't know if it's there.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
So yeah, that kind of concludes our thoughts on the royal interview. I would just like to add in one final point. I have a feeling, and I may be completely off the rocker here, but I have a feeling that Harry and Meghan's daughter is going to have well somewhere in her name, because their organization is Archwell and Archie.
Oh, yeah.
So that's my little like tidbit to the summer.
That's
and we might have to revisit this segment if it comes true, because I'll call a psychic and be like, hello, I am you.
We'll plop it as a side note in another podcast somewhere.
So yeah, that's the royal tea.
Well, that concludes today's episode.
Thanks y'all so much for tuning in, giving us a listen. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, etc., etc., etc. Comment, share, tell your friends.
And tune in next time when we post another podcast.
We can't give you a timeline on when that will be because we're both in school.
Bye.
Bye.